I did not expect to make this video. I didn't expect to make any YouTube content, to be honest. But somehow, 200 of you found my original video on foraging. Who the hell are you people, and what are you doing in my house? Anyways, what will this video cover? This video will cover every single little bit of information we gathered over 200 levels of foraging. 200 very slow and painful levels of foraging. And hopefully this video is going to make those 200 levels for you much easier, because as I found out, some of these plants are so horrible to forage, you're better off just not touching them at all. These plants include the following: periwinkles, wall plants. Look at that guy go. He's getting so little experience right now. Nettles and pondweed. Hogberries, surprisingly. Limplets, or whatever the hell you call these things. And rack. So you may be wondering, why wouldn't you want to collect half of the resources? And it's actually quite simple for most of them. So for wall plants and periwinkles, it's because there's nothing else to fill in between while collecting the periwinkles and wall plants, and they take a little bit to respawn, and while they're respawning, there's downtime. Regarding wall plants and periwinkles, there's also this one problem, that they for some reason give you a lot less KP percentage than pretty much anything else, and that's kind of weird. I suspect it's because there's no enemies around you, but so the same thing is for most of the other things, so not really sure why that's a thing. I think that might be a bug. There's also another thing. My level 167 wall plant gives me less experience than my level 161 kelp. Which, by the way, doesn't even use a tool. You might be saying, oh, well, it's because of the tool experience, right? I have a plus 11.6% experience on my wall plants, and they still give me less experience than the kelp that doesn't use any tool. How does that work? Pondweeds are actually kind of a little bit confusing, because they do give you the good experience, but they don't give you KP percent again. I don't really understand. There's like really big inconsistency with KP. They also give you about 20% KP for a full inventory, while other things like seashells and seaweed give you around 27% for a full inventory at higher levels, which is really confusing. Hogberries are okay at level 29, mostly because there's literally nothing else around that level that you could collect. And even then, I had to create a very weird pathing for them to be more experienced than just doing anything else. Talking about pathings, I did create a pretty scuffed Excel sheet which can let you calculate your own experience per hour and your own KP per hour. That being said, I do have a list of pathings that I did on YouTube that I will link in the description. I will also link the Excel sheet that I used to calculate all the experience and the KP per hour, because I don't think that my pathings are the best pathings, but they are definitely much better than just collecting the highest tier item you can in 99% of the situations, at least the situations that I have run into so far. Limpets are bad, literally just because they are so far from the storage stone, but they would suck even if they would be close to the storage stone, because they are really far apart and there's nothing really there to fill your space in between walking back and forth. Talking about nettles, it's not that they're completely useless. I still use them in some rotations to fill out empty space, and they are okay and they end up in my inventory. But you could honestly just not collect a single nettle in the game and be completely fine up to level 200 at least. Not sure about later levels. Rack, bladder, or whatever you want to call it, is also horrible to collect on its own. Again, it is really far, it is very spread out, and because of that, it just kind of sucks. There is one exception though. There's one really good exception, and that is when you get level 131 stars. There's actually a pathing you can do with rack, 1 seaweed, and level 131 stars that gives you more experience an hour and KP per hour than the previous path for like 10 levels. And the difference is honestly not even that big. Also, one really important thing that I haven't mentioned yet, please do your carpeting to level 32 before you even consider foraging. This stone over here is gonna be your lifeline, is gonna be your lover. This is gonna be the best thing that has ever happened to you since sliced bread. You must unlock this storage, or your foraging is gonna be absolutely miserable. So, the next thing I want to talk about is that there's 3 different ways of foraging, depending on what is your end goal and at what stage of the game you currently are. We will start with the most simple thing that pretty much I see 99% of people do that don't really care about min-maxing, is just collecting the highest level thing. This is not bad, but you will lose a lot of experience and KP, especially collecting the materials I just mentioned that are horrible to collect for you regarding XP per hour and KP per hour, because some of them just give very little KP percentage for some reason, and they also give pretty low experience per hour for some reason. The benefit of this is that you can do alchemy really easily, because you're just collecting pretty much one of each plant, right? You will usually have just enough plants to advance your alchemy level higher. This will also give you a lot of silver profit if you like alchemy, which is again pretty good, but this will slow down your foraging levels. And if your foraging levels are kind of slow, that means the level of alchemy potions you can do is also going to be pretty low, which means you're also going to make pretty low money. The second way of foraging, and my preferred way to forage, is called greedy foraging, or rather that is what I call it. Greedy foraging is basically foraging only the highest experience per hour and the highest KP per hour material. This has the benefit of leveling your foraging much faster. The downside of this, and the reason I call greedy foraging, is that you're not going to make much money. Your only way of making money is going to be pretty much alchemy if you don't have another profession to make you money. And what you're going to do is usually buy the second component and craft a potion doing that and then sell the potion, which is going to net you around 200 to 400 copper on average per profit, which is horrible if you consider how long it takes you to make a potion in comparison to cooking like veggie stews. This leads me into a different discussion. Usually when people are foraging, they're just by default leveling alchemy because it's the most logical thing to do, right? You're collecting a lot of potion materials, right? You're gonna make a lot of potions, you're gonna make alchemy, you're gonna make profit, right? And this is great if you're doing the first type of foraging, which is the classical foraging of gathering one of each grass, right? Which is gonna be slower. But what if you want to be a min-maxer? You want to get your foraging level as high as possible, but you still want to make a lot of money. Well, surprisingly, cooking might actually be your better answer. And I fell into the alchemy trap myself. Well, I wouldn't really call it a trap. I still gained some profit, and alchemy is a really useful skill. But if I would have to do this again, I would actually lean into cooking. And that is because of potatoes. Well, yes, mashed potatoes are not the fastest thing to do. They're not the highest experience thing to do. They're pretty easy to do, and overall, like per item, they are quite a lot of profit. They might not be the highest amount of profit, but there's another thing I want to talk about. The end game recipes use a lot of potatoes. Then we look at foraging. I'm actually gonna make this bigger. Then we look at foraging. And we scroll all the way down, and what do we see? The last thing we're going to be collecting for the last like 70 levels of foraging is going to be potatoes. You may be thinking, oh, well, it's just one potato. Okay, let's scroll up. We see some limpets, which already we discussed are horrible. We see some hogberries, which again we already discussed are pretty horrible. Starfish on their own, pretty horrible. Guess what? Another potato. Water lily and bell plant. This is one of the routes I've been doing since level 113, which includes bell plants, water lilies, and potatoes, which means I'm going to have a lot of high level potatoes. This is not the only example of this. You actually end up doing the potato route a lot in level 137, which again ends you up with a lot of potatoes. So if you want to make the most amount of money while leveling foraging, while not leveling a different profession to generate more money, cooking is probably your best bet. So, there was one more thing I wanted to discuss, and that is enchantments. Basically, in my opinion, enchantments are not really that worth if you're tight on money, right? If you're planning to not only level foraging but level other professions. I don't think enchanting your foraging tools matters that much. Obviously, enchanting your tool will make your foraging faster. It's obviously going to improve it. It's obviously gonna give you an increased experience rate. But the reason I feel like it's not as worth it, at least in my current level of foraging, is because like half of the items you're going to be collecting don't use a tool. So that experience gain you're getting here is never going to get used. That being said, at level 113, there is actually a big benefit of having enchanted all of your tools, right? Because one of the routes I did was using all of my tools. It was using my trowel, it was using my net, and it was using my scissors. I just call them scissors. I cannot spell the proper word for them, right? And I suspect very, very high level, once I start unlocking the bell plant here in Potato, that I will actually want to enchant every single one of my tools for maximum experience. But up to level 200, if you really, 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 really want to enchant a tool, the only tool I would suggest you enchanting is a trowel, and even then, I would probably not put more than 10 points into it. I don't think the experience gain is going to be that much bigger for you. But if you really want to enchant a tool, then trowel is probably your best bet. This is because one of the best and easiest experience routes is when you get level 77 shells, and right now level 185 shells, which is by far the highest experience in KP per hour you can get in any of the routes. And the trowel is just gonna boost it even further, and it's gonna be amazing. Another reason for the trowel is because, once again, you will be collecting a lot of potatoes, whether you like it or not. Potatoes are gonna be your highest experience for a very long time once you get level 433, so you're pretty much just preparing for the future at that point. So another thing I wanted to talk about is if you're really, really rich and you really don't want to collect monument pieces, you can actually buy monument pieces of the previous tier from this merchant over here and bring the monument pieces over to the lady. I would never suggest doing this because collecting monument pieces is not that hard and it doesn't take that much time. And monument pieces are probably your, well, not probably, they are your only way to really gain money while foraging, unless you're crafting and doing something else. Which again, takes away from the foraging time, takes away from your experience from foraging. And you may say, well, I hate collecting these rocks because on the other room, on this end, there are ghouls that attack you constantly and you constantly have to use an immunity spell. This is actually really, really, really easy to bypass. All you have to do is collect 1, 2, 3 of these, 4 of these stones. Once you collect every stone in this room, you go to this tile over here, and sadly I do not have a fear potion right now, but you have a fear potion here. You drink it right here, it lasts 3 minutes, and it is perfectly enough for you to gain a full inventory. And if you only need 312 pieces to finish this monument, you will need 13.5 potions, so basically 14 potions. Obviously you don't have to use a potion every single time you're doing this. I do it over here just for safety reasons, because quite often what people do is they run through here and they pull a ghoul right to here, and then you don't have time to react. You don't have time to react and drink a fear potion, and the ghoul starts attacking you, locking you into combat. Like this person over here is going to do now. Is pulling the ghoul. This is perfect for the video. He's pulling the ghoul to this entrance, and now this guy goes out of here. Oh well, it threw him into a different instance, but this guy goes through, and the ghoul would instantly attack him, which is a pain in the ass, and that is why I drink the fear potion here. Obviously, if you're confident in yourself, you can go outside of here and collect these pieces, and whenever a ghoul aggroes on you, only then drink the potion. Up to your judgment if you want to be greedy on them or not, but usually these monument pieces pay for themselves. They pay for the fear potions, you just buy them, you don't even have to craft them.